Actually, by the time I've got a little introduction that some people may be happy to miss. So I'll launch it right now, and hopefully by the time I'm done, we'll have most of the people who have registered. 7:01 now. So welcome everyone. I'm Michael Cantwell. I'm president of the Democratic Club of Delray Beach, and we're honored to have Charlie as our guest tonight. I'd like to thank both Charlie and Lou Grossman, who is the chair of Seniors Outreach, for arranging this visit. When I moved to Florida in 2014, my aunt, Marion Kulick, David over there's mother, was co-founder of this club back in the early 90s. And she told me at that time, Charlie was running for governor as a Democrat, but had previously been a Republican when he served as governor. And Marion, who was, the quintessential Democrat, said that she always had a soft spot for Charlie because of what he'd done to restore voting rights for all of those Floridians who'd been disenfranchised by what was essentially a racist clause in the Constitution that was enacted just after the Civil War that permanently disenfranchised anyone that was convicted of a felony, and it didn't matter whether they served their time. They were out until a clemency board restored their rights. It was not in Charlie's interest as a Republican to be restoring rights to former felons who were disproportionately Democrats, but he did anyway. In just 4 years, 155,000 Floridians regained their voting rights. And to put that in perspective, when Jeb Bush was governor for 8 years, twice as long, he restored the rights of half as many, 77,000. The odious Rick Scott did less than 2,500 in 8 years. And DeSantis is just barely reaching triple digits at this point. But the other interesting thing is that no Democrat has restored the rights of more former felons than did Charlie Crist. There was an article back in the Times in 2002 that said the largest number of people at that time who regained their voting rights was 16,000 under Bob Graham. Okay, well, that's 16,000 in his best year. And Charlie's annual average is 38,750, more than double that. Charlie lost that race in 2014, and it was basically my introduction to Florida because Democrats haven't won a statewide race since. The only thing that we did was get Amendment 4 enacted, and then immediately the Republicans went to work on it and essentially neutered it, created a law that essentially or effectively created a poll tax. So we really need a Democrat in the governor's mansion. After losing that race, Charlie rebounded in 2016 by flipping a congressional seat that had been Republican for the prior 60 years. And he's been reelected twice, and now running to rid our state of the disease that is Ron DeSantis. If he is the nominee, I see this race as a replay of the 2020 presidential election, pitting a competent, decent human being against an incompetent, heartless miscreant. So, fellow Democrats, I give you the man I like to refer to as our once and future governor, Charlie Crist.
Michael.
One sec, folks. I'm going to mute everybody.
Okay.
Unmute Charlie, you and Michael, unmute yourselves, and everyone else can also. Go. Oh, did I screw up?
Can you hear me okay?
Got it.
Okay, great. Well, first and foremost, Michael, let me thank you for your gracious introduction, Mr. President. That was very kind of you. I appreciate you focusing on restoration of rights. I have a short story to tell you about how that really came to fruition. So it was the fall of 2006. It was 1 week before the gubernatorial election. I was campaigning in Jacksonville, Florida, and an Associated Press reporter approached me and said, you know, Charlie, if you win the election in 1 week, would you commit as the new governor to fight for automatic restoration of rights of former nonviolent felons? And I was a Republican at the time, as you appropriately pointed out, Michael. And I thought about it for a while. I was, you know, 1 week before the election, I was running on fumes, to be candid. And at any rate, so I thought about it and I answered and I said, absolutely, I would absolutely do that. And since he was an Associated Press reporter, his article appeared in most of the newspapers across the state the next morning. So immediately, I start getting phone calls from my former Republican friends saying, Charlie, what in the world are you doing? Why would you commit to such a thing? And as you said, Michael, that probably would disproportionately favor the Democratic vote in the future if I was able to get it accomplished. And so receiving these phone calls, I said, well, you know, for me, it really comes down to one word that I was taught by my mother and father, how the way they raised my three sisters and me, and also what I was taught where I went to church. And that word is forgiveness. I believe in forgiveness, and I believe people deserve second chances in life. I mean, who doesn't deserve a second chance in life? And so that was my response. They were pretty quiet on the other end of the phone after I kind of laid it on them with that, as you might imagine. But Michael was absolutely right. In that 4-year period, we were able to get 155,000 people their rights restored and their right to vote. And now look at what we're facing today with Governor DeSantis, with the Republican legislature, trying to suppress our right to vote yet again. And the bill that the governor signed just last spring, not far from you, I think it was in West Palm Beach, actually, not Delray, but be that as it may, the only news outlet, you'll probably remember this, he allowed in was Fox News, of course. And so he signs a bill that, number one, is going to make it harder to exercise mail-in voting or absentee voting, as we used to refer to it. My 89-year-old father, my 87-year-old mother love voting by mail. Frankly, I do too, especially when you're in a pandemic, for crying out loud. And, you know, so it's more safe, it's very efficient, and you don't have to leave the comfort of your home if you're not able. My mother, God bless her, she's wheelchair bound. And so it's difficult to get out and do things like voting. But that would permit her to be able to do so. So they restricted that significantly. You got to sign up for it every year instead of just signing up for it and getting it automatically every election cycle. But then, you know, maybe even a more heinous thing they put into that law was to say that the drop boxes where you can drop off your ballots will not essentially be in minority communities throughout the state of Florida. Well, again, who's that going to punish electorally the most? Probably more Democrats, as more of our voters are people of color. And so it's very obvious to me what they're trying to do. They're trying to game the system, and they're trying to rig it in their favor, if you will. And it's just wrong. And that's why in Washington, we're working so hard, and the president, God bless him, has really focused on this week, voting rights, the John Lewis bill and others, and trying to get those through the US Senate without having the filibuster problem apply. We'll see how this pans out. It's going to take a little time, obviously, but that would supersede those other laws, not only in Florida, but other red states that have passed similar type laws in order to suppress the Democratic vote. In addition to that, though, that's not the only hope to save us. You know, I have always seen that, you know, when people are told what they cannot do and people make it harder for them to exercise their freedom and their rights, that many times people, they create a backlash from those folks, meaning us, meaning we will turn out in droves more than they ever imagined because they're trying to unfairly suppress our voice at the ballot box. But the third thing also to give us hope, several lawsuits have been filed against that law, Michael. I think the NAACP, the League of Women Voters among them, and others, probably the ACLU additionally, have filed suit against that very law that Governor DeSantis signed. And I'm pretty convinced, you know, I used to be your attorney general too, not just your governor, but I'm pretty sure that a fair federal court would find that that law is unconstitutional because it's defying your rights to exercise your democratic freedom and right to vote. But that's just one issue. Let's talk about COVID and this governor. And all of these things are the reasons I'm running for governor, because you deserve better, because Florida deserves better. We have a governor right now who we all know is laser focused on running for president in 2024 and getting that Republican nomination. And if you heard any of his State of the State speech this week, all he was talking about was Republican red meat. And the reason? Because he's focused on trying to get that Republican nomination in 24. And he's not playing to Floridians, he's playing to a national audience. He has forgotten about our Florida, and he's more focused on Iowa voters and the Republican hard right, which would be their primary voters for an election in 24. Well, we're not a stepping stone, Florida. Florida's not a stepping stone. We deserve to have a governor who every day gets up every morning and thinks about restoring rights of former felons or re-entering citizens, and also making sure that we protect a woman's right to choose. Let's talk about that issue for a minute. So already this week, 2 bills have been filed to suppress a woman's right to make her own decisions about her own body, and that's just dead wrong. In essence, it's almost mimicking what's happened in Texas and in Mississippi. And the governor said this week he would sign the bill when it passes. So we're under attack, you know, whether you're a minority, you know, and he talks about how free Florida is. Well, maybe it's free if, you know, it's not free if you're a woman. You know, they don't want you to have a choice. It's not free if you're a former felon and you want to have forgiveness and get your rights restored and get back on track in a positive way. You know, it's not free if you're an African American or a person of color and you live in one of these communities where you're not going to have a drop box anymore for your ballot. They're making Florida the not free state. I would challenge Governor DeSantis on that. Not free for most Floridians, free for the wealthy, free for the connected, and free for those who give him a campaign check. And it's awful. It's corrupt. It's almost criminal. But let's talk about COVID for a minute too. So he's up there in Tallahassee giving this speech saying how great everything is in Florida and we're booming and everything's wonderful. We're booming with COVID, Governor DeSantis. You know, we've had now 63,000 of our fellow Floridians pass away because he wouldn't listen to science. He wouldn't listen to healthcare professionals. He wouldn't advocate getting a vaccine or wearing a mask indoors. Is it any wonder that in each of the 3 spikes COVID has had now in the United States, we topped out at #1 because of the lack of leadership we have at the top? You know, he's in denial. And this is funny. The other day, even Donald Trump said when DeSantis was asked if he got a booster, he couldn't tell the truth and say that he had because he's a coward. Well, that's one thing the former president got right. And DeSantis is a coward. And again, it's what I said before. The reason he won't say that and he won't admit to it is because he's focused on trying to get that Republican nomination for president. This is what we're dealing with, my friends. This is what we have now in Florida. And we've had it for 3.5 years. And it's high time we got rid of it. And I have faith. I believe in my heart of hearts that all our good Democrats, many, vast majority of independent voters, and even a swath of moderate to reasonable Republicans will come our way. Because what's happening in COVID is not just happening to, family members of yours and mine. The virus does not discriminate. It's hitting Republican families too. And let me just tell you from a personal example how this touched my family. So in Pinellas County, St. Petersburg, where I live, our school board did not defy Governor DeSantis' order that kids not wear masks in school. And so my 5-year-old niece goes to school on the first day in late August last year. Nobody's wearing a mask. And within 2 days, she contracts COVID. So she goes home at night, of course. And when she goes home at night, she sees her 2-month-old sister who contracted COVID 2 days after that. These bad policies and these misled priorities of our governor and irresponsible, reckless leadership has serious consequences to it. That's why we need to defeat him. That's why we need to win. We need to bring hope back to Florida. Florida's a great place. Florida's a great state. Florida's not booming because of what DeSantis is doing. Florida's booming because Florida's awesome. I mean, look at our weather today. It's just incredible, right? It's not booming. He can't take credit for that. That was done by a guy named God, not DeSantis, not the gov, God. And I'm tired of him taking credit for that. Florida's great because Florida is great. And I love Florida. And I know you all do too. And I'm asking for your help tonight. I need your support. I have a primary with 2 fine ladies. But I think I'm the best positioned to beat this guy. I've done the job before. That race in 14 was only by 1% with Scott, and only because he put 12 million of his own money in the last week of the election. We were ahead the whole time, which was great. And right now, in terms of polling with DeSantis, we're neck and neck. And I think it's probably higher than that because we haven't seen a poll since the Omicron variant came in. And I guarantee you that's suppressing his performance. And I'm sure that we're ahead of him right now, but we need to stay ahead of him. And where does that happen? That's where you come in. We can only do this if we all do this together. Make up your minds about who you want to support in the primary. That's all well and good, of course. But once that happens, and I commit, no matter who the nominee is, I'm there 1,000%. But I think it's going to be me. I'm not taking it for granted. I'm working hard. I'm talking to you tonight, right? And it's important to do that. But I'm honored to be with you. And whether it's supporting public education, 2 of my 3 sisters were public school teachers in Florida, and he's not doing it. He's given them a bonus, won't give them a raise. If he really respected them, he'd give them a raise. That's the right thing to do. And since I've said it, he'll probably try to do it now. But that's okay. We know where his heart isn't. We do. We know where it is. And sometimes a good campaign pushes people. And we're going to push him. And we're going to push him right out of the governor's mansion. And if it's me and I get there, that means you're in the governor's mansion. And I mean that. It's called the People's House. That's what I always called it when I was there before. And that's what we need to have back again. A great president once said many years ago that the American government needs to be of the people, by the people, and for the people, not just for the rich, not just for the corporations, not just for the people who contribute to Governor DeSantis. Enough is enough. We've had it with this guy. And I know we can beat him, and I'll do it as a happy warrior. And it'll be so much damn fun to take him down and restore civility and decency and kindness to the governor's mansion in Florida. Again, we need it there and we deserve it there. God bless and thank you. I'll try to answer your questions.
Feel free to raise hands or unmute and talk. Julie.
Yes, thank you. Well, thank you very much for your time this evening. And, you brought up some of the things relating to COVID, which leads into some of the concerns that I have. In 2020, Florida lawmakers proposed 42 bills prohibiting local governments from taking action on issues in their own communities.
Terrible.
Correct.
Yep.
And in 2021, I believe it's approximately 29, it could be 26. I don't know what the exact number is right now, but it's really a tool being used by lawmakers to remove and supersede local authority. One of the things you talked about was COVID. HB 945, which is SB 2006, signed into law, severely restricts the ability of local governments to enact emergency policies to prevent residents and to protect the residents. And it gives the governor sweeping powers to invalidate local emergency regulations. And so, for example, we say wear masks. He could say, no, you're not. And that's it. Done. And it's very concerning. HB 421 SB 1876, which is enforcing comprehensive plans. HB 337 750, impact fees on new infrastructure, guns, clean energy, Key West resolution. And recently we are experiencing a problem with HB 55. But I mean, this to me is remarkable considering the amount of, I don't want to characterize parties per se, but generally speaking, the Republican Party, refers to it as the party of less government, yet they're taking control over the local municipalities in a way that is remarkably concerning. And I don't even think most people really know or even understand the ramifications of some of these laws.
Mhm. Well, you're absolutely right, Julie. They're terribly authoritarian.
Right.
And it's amazing to me. You're right. Having been a Republican before, they used to brag about less government, more freedom. Well,
Right.
this is about more government, less freedom. That's
Precisely.
You're exactly right. They're trying to centralize it. In fact, I said authoritarian
With one
I used the
person.
word on purpose, in one
Yeah.
person, in
Right.
Tallahassee, in the governor's office. And it's
Mhm.
dead wrong. I mean, my father
frightening.
was on the school board when I was a kid. It is frightening and it's wrong. We respected the school board,
Mhm.
city council, county commissions. These are constitutionally elected offices in all 67 counties of our state, and they need to be respected and
Right.
not, portrayed as pawns of the governor. I mean, we don't have a king in Tallahassee. And this
Wow.
guy is not going to get to be that because we're going to beat him on November the 8th, and it's coming fast.
Wishing you luck.
Thank you very much.
Should have added, Charlie, that Juli is one of our local officials. She's one of our most active and best city commissioners in Delray Beach.
Well, I love Delray Beach. Beautiful.
And in fact, she's going to be talking later about some of the happenings.
Yes.
Let me just follow up by saying, Republicans believe in states' rights when it works for them.
Right.
In 2000, it didn't work for them, so they jumped through hoops. But one of the things that worries me about this race is Democrats. Democrats like their circular firing squads. We've been doing it for years. I voted for Barry Commoner in 1980 because I thought Jimmy Carter just wasn't good enough, and how much of a difference was there between Carter and Reagan? Well, I don't think that Carter was going to win that race, and certainly my vote didn't make a difference. But he appointed 3 of the 5 justices, Reagan did, who helped Republicans steal that election probably the most disrespected Supreme Court decision in its entire history. And we got there because in 2000, people thought that Al Gore wasn't good enough. Ralph Nader was better. I liked Ralph Nader better than Al Gore, but I was in New York and I had a free vote and I was so angry at Ralph Nader, I voted for Al Gore, and then it happened again in 2016. All of the people that stayed home because Hillary Clinton, was a fascist psychopath. That's what Democrats I argued with online. That's how they labeled her. Red Queen Hillary. And we're facing the same thing. If you get the nomination, I have to tell you, I've been on Facebook groups arguing with people, who, are no better than the Republicans who believe that the world is run by a cabal of Satan worshiping pedophiles, like so many Republicans do, who have said to me they would never vote for Charlie Crist because he'd been a Republican. What kind of, how many times do we have to lose elections? Anyway, I don't know if you have any ideas what we can do about that. I keep trying, in our little world.
I've got to go at the bottom of the hour. I've got another call at 7:30. Yeah, I have an answer for you. Just look back in our country to the 2020 presidential race and how frustrated Democrats, independents, and probably some reasonable Republicans were with the former administration of Donald Trump, and how that frustration, concern, and anger, frankly, was brought to bear. And so Joe Biden ends up beating that guy by over 8 million votes. Yeah, you said it in your introduction to me. This looks like a reigniting of that race. And I will tell you that people I know are so frustrated with DeSantis, as they were in 2020 with Trump, that our nominee, and if I'm it, I think we're going to get swept into office because all the Democrats will be ticked off at DeSantis. All the independents, or a vast majority, will be, and some reasonable Republicans will be, because as I cited, what happened in my family with my 5-year-old niece and my 2-month-old niece, that's not just happening to Democratic families in our state. And over almost 5 million Floridians now have gotten sick with this disease because this governor has been such a horrific leader and cares obviously much more about his own political future than he does about the lives of our fellow Floridians. It's shameful. And I think that's going to be, plus, let me not forget, our nominee for the US Senate is going to be Val Demings, a colleague of mine in the Congress now, a wonderful candidate. Imagine what a boost that's going to be for minority turnout as well. There's a lot going on here that the stars can just line up just right, and this thing happens. We'll shock the world, I'll guarantee you. And Beto O'Rourke may do it in Texas on the same day, and then let the bombs go off.
Yes.
No, I'm really optimistic. I really am. And you all ought to be too, and fired up, and just encourage all of your friends and those who may not be registered to get registered, because it's all going to come down to those votes. These races are always tight in Florida. We know it. This one will be too. But if we have a little wind at our back come October, we're going to be there. Now I do have to go. But God bless you.
Thank you,
so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your time.
Tonight. Julie, thank you for putting yourself out and serving on the city council. God bless all of you for being good, active Democrats. And let's turn Florida blue in 22. Thank you.
Have a nice evening.
Thank you.
You too. God bless you.
Okay. Well, actually, he answered Rob's question, I think, in the chat, what we can do. And the other thing we can do is my T-shirt says it.
Yes.
There's more of us than them, really, and it's just a matter of uniting, as Talene said in the chat. We must stop the purity tests and get behind the candidate, and I think, or I hope, that's what happens. My dream ticket. And we're going to have, we're looking to have Annette Taddeo speak either at our February or March meeting, but she was Charlie's running mate in 2014. And they'd be a powerhouse ticket, I think, together, and let Nikki Fried stay at Ag, where we're going to need two votes on the clemency board to start restoring the rights of former offenders. I mean, if we end up with three Republicans in the cabinet and a Democrat as governor, we don't have the votes to start doing that. Let me turn it over to Julie to update us on city politics.
Great, thank you. And that was a good meeting. All of the meetings have actually been really great. I love the guest speakers you have. So, the city's working for you. I'm working for you. Some of the key initiatives that we have going on right now, we're working on traffic calming. There is a lot of traffic. Stormwater, many of you probably noticed the other night, we had a horrible storm. We have a stormwater problem in some areas of the city. In part, that's due to rising tides. In part, that's due to, the number of people who have moved here over time. Sea level rise is an issue which we are addressing. Also, we're working on a low wake zone in the intercoastal. We're also working on a leadership in energy and environmental design program for green building. We are awaiting an urban forestry master plan, and what that will do will be to tell us where we can relocate or plant trees to work on expanding our canopy. And we might have to get creative and look to HOAs to help us in that respect, but it will give us a good sense of what we have available in terms of space. We are also working on a sound ordinance in the downtown area to just figure out if we are, what kind of sound we're producing and what we can do to accommodate the residents in the after hours. We're just trying to gauge where we're at basically with that. Myself personally, I'm focusing my intentions on getting a lot done. I'm in a PFAS working group. Most people know that PFAS are widely used, long-lasting chemicals, which can be harmful to humans. We are in a good situation, though, is in terms of, the EPA standards, we are far below, but that was one of the things that came up in the last election. So I got involved with a group through the League of Cities. I'm the commission representative on a tourism master plan group. And basically what we're looking to do is have a long-term development plan to provide, structured framework for tourism development. And the reason why I really was interested in this is I know that a lot of us, and myself included, you feel like when there's so many tourists and you almost feel like you can't appreciate your own city. And so the goal is to try and, one, look to expand outside. We know what we don't necessarily want. I think most people agree we don't want this to become a Fort Lauderdale with a lot of young partying going on downtown. So what can we do to bring people to the city? Because obviously tourism is a big economic driver for us, but still have us appreciate the quality of life that we have in the city and get the good balance. So I'm working on that. I'm working on a tree ordinance, which I think is almost done. And that should also help us increase the tree canopy and preserve the trees that we have in place. And what it does is look at placing a greater monetary value on the trees because we have to put our money where our mouth is. A beach bucket program, and that's going to actually, I think we're going to be presenting that this weekend or next weekend. And that program, basically, you'll see coat racks at some of the entrances on the beach, like old-fashioned coat racks with hooks, and then these little vinyl bags and QR codes. So what we're trying to do is engage kids that come to the beach to pick up garbage and plastic, and also get a little education about plastic pollution. You all know the problem we have with plastic pollution in the United States. I've been discussing with the city attorney, looking for a supermajority to amend the land use map. The land use map is what dictates what can be built. And one of the things that's happened is we see a lot of projects coming before us looking to amend the land use map, but it was recently amended in our comprehensive plan. So I think we really need to secure it. And what that does is kind of it doesn't, I won't want to say slow the development, but it makes us look at it much more critically. And I think that's imperative. We are almost at build out. I think we have 6% more. We have a lot of developments coming in that are going to bring in a lot of population. And I really think we need to be mindful of what are the impacts to the quality of life of the residents, and also what can we provide long term, what's our capacity. One of the things I'm really excited about is a coastal habitat conservation plan. I got money in the budget for that this year. So we're moving forward on that. And that's basically a plan to preserve, again, the beach is our biggest economic driver. So it will protect the vegetation, the species on the dunes, and basically protect the wildlife, which is our resource. So we're basically keeping our beach healthy. And that will beget our enrollment in a program called the Blue Flag Program, which is a voluntary international eco award program. And it's pretty exclusive, only a few beaches. I think there are only a couple in the United States that have this designation, but it means that you're very environmentally sound. 2 polystyrene ordinances were passed, but again, because of this preemptive language that has been imposed on us, it's very challenging to enforce them outside of city property. I also started a TNVR program for cats. I don't know if you're familiar, but I think Dave, you had a cat running around back there. I have a couple cats in my house, but it's a trap, neuter, vaccinate, and release program. We have about between 7,000 and 11,000 feral cats. People prefer the word community cats, but they're feral cats. And so living in the city, and not that we don't want them. I feed myself every single day with my daughter, but we need to control the growth of the population for their health as well as ours. And this program, is also going to look to incorporate maybe feeding, because the cats need healthy food and care when they get elderly, because the biggest problem with the outdoor cats is they get older and they really can't, their immune system changes and they can't take care of themselves. So it's a great program. And it won't be very costly. I worked tirelessly to add 2 lanes to the swimming pool at Pompey Park, because what I learned as a commissioner is that these children who live in our city, if they don't have resources, they cannot belong to our swim team. Our swim team currently practices at Boca. So children who want to belong to the swim team need a ride to and from practice every single day. And there's a lovely swim teacher over at our high school. And she's very good about trying to pair up kids in need with families who have resources to get the transportation. But she says typically it falls off after a short period of time. So with 2 additional lanes at Pompey Park, the children in our city who want to belong to our swim team will be able to do that because they can swim at Pompey Park. And I'm also working on this program to, we do have some people in our city who are homeless. And by homeless, I mean without actual home, not living at a grandma's or living in a relative's, but literally in cars and bus shelters. I have connected with the Palm Beach County school system to identify those families. There are 2 that I've identified immediately, and then there are 6 that are in motels who are in a situation where they will shortly lose their homes, and I'm working to place them in homes. So those are the things that are happening, and all great things. And then some of the concerns I have, things that I've been pretty vocal about, as all of you know, is home rule. Another situation is I'm trying to figure out why our expenses are constantly outpacing our revenues in the city. And I think I don't want to speak out of turn, but we have some issues with our pensions. We have some issues we need to address, and I'm trying to work on that slowly. And also, I've been working tirelessly to protect commercial property, because there's a big move to convert the commercial property land use into residential and then create apartments. And while I know there's a need for housing here and everybody wants to move here, we have to be very mindful about protecting the commercial tax base, because otherwise the burden will be on the residential homeowner. So right now, 9% of our land use in our city is commercial, and only 1%, used to be 2%, is industrial. And so that's critically important to me. So And what I'm going to say is, I mean, I'm loving being a city commissioner. I worked tirelessly to get elected, as all of you know. It was challenging. And, I appreciate all of you for being an informed electorate, but unfortunately, a lot of people aren't involved. And so it's going to take effort to get the word out about what's going on in the city. And, it's hard. It's a challenge. I don't know if many of you follow. I've had a lot of ethics violations filed against me in very short order, all dismissed as having no credibility whatsoever. But the problem is when I go to run again, all you'll see is a card that says, numerous ethics violations, et cetera. So what your question, Michael, was very interesting tonight, because it's how do we move forward in this new climate of politics where, truth is irrelevant, and, it's just not about, can you come to the table and do the job, and what are your qualifications? People aren't being judged on their ability to do the job anymore. And to me, that's disappointing. But again, I mean, there's so many great benefits to doing this. I feel like there's so much that can be accomplished, and I'm very excited to be your city commissioner. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Julie. Yeah, it's, my Aunt Marion told us to stay out of city politics. And every time we've stuck our toe into it, we've got burnt. It is, you and I were talking the other day about what goes on, and it's not pretty. And what happened in the mayoral campaign last time was, about the most disgusting series of flyers I have ever seen coming into my mailbox every day, filled with lies. And, we're in a post-truth environment. If you have, I mean, literally, the Times had an article and it reported on a poll that found that 23% of Republicans believed that the QAnon conspiracies were mostly true. That's 23%, and 33% thought they were partly true. That's 56%, and of course the core conspiracy theory is that the world is run by these Satan worshiping pedophiles, and it's Tom Hanks and Oprah Winfrey and the Pope and the Dalai Lama, and of course Hillary, the Clintons, and George Soros. And you're dealing with people that are just so profoundly ignorant that it's frightening. When we were out waving signs last year, or I guess, last year, for the presidential election, some guy in his car on the corner of Atlantic and the Peace Corner screamed out of his car, George Bush. No, Donald Trump is the greatest president in the history of the United States. And I said, why stop there? He's Jesus Christ. And the guy yelled back, that's right, he's Jesus Christ. So, I mean, that's the level of mind that we're dealing with. I don't know.
It's a challenge, though, because locally, I mean, I will say, and listen, I think, I will say that I think it's not, locally, it's not like the national politics in that it's affiliation with party, right? It's more of a, here you could reasonably argue it's development versus less development. It's not really, I mean, I think it's hard because I know what you're saying, and the national issues are the national issues, and they're impactful. And in some respects, there's a trickle down because you're seeing PAC money in these elections where you didn't see them many years ago and different things. But I mean, I think the reason why local parties can get involved is because these are local issues that are really impactful. I mean, if we can't get involved locally, the most important things happen on our local level. I don't know. I find it disappointing the number of people that turn out to vote in these elections in light of the population. It's like 70,000, 69,000, and you maybe get 12,000 out to vote. It's hard to get the message out, and I think it's going to get harder and harder with the voting restrictions in place, for sure. For sure.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I have one quick question. The only thing that most people talk to me about what's going on in Delray is about Old School Square.
Yeah.
I don't want to put you on the spot or anything.
No, you're not putting me on the
Can you give me a
spot at all.
summary of what happened there?
Listen, here, I'll give you a short, long history. For over 14 years, there have been financial issues there. And so they get funding. So they're, just to be clear, it's property where they pay $1 a year lease, rent. And then they get funding from the CRA it's supposed to be for a program, but they always ask for additional subsidies to cover operations. And what you find over the years, in 2017, they requested additional funding because they had depleted all of their private reserves with operational expenses. And that doesn't sound bad until you look at the situation and you find out there was like a 41% increase in that year for executive compensation. And then you find out that they had to give back an endowment grant to the state for $240,000. And there's only 3 reasons why that happens. And I'm not exactly sure what they did or didn't do, but they had to give back that money. So there's a history of them needing funding and needing support from the city. That may not be the worst thing, but the problem is their lease has very specific requirements of reporting, financial reporting, in order for them to be in compliance. And they haven't been for many years. And we keep asking and they're not providing. And then I'm going to be very frank, because this is all out there. They came in front of the CRA to discuss the situation and indicated they were struggling due to COVID, which seemed reasonable at the time. This was, over the summer and last year. Last year, we continued to fund them, concerned about COVID and thinking we have to give them opportunity, even though there is a history of problems. And by last year, I'm talking about in the CRA. But this year, they didn't even qualify for funding because they weren't in financial compliance. Simultaneously, they began work on the city property without, they filed through the building department for a permit, but inadvertently, I'll say that, put their own name on it as if they owned the property. So what happened is the city discovered that they had done that and then gave them the opportunity to rectify it, but they didn't get the proper bond needed. Any development in the city where there's being construction, a bond is needed, and what the bond does is protect the taxpayer money. So they didn't get that. So then we were forced to stop construction. They had to come in, explain everything that went on, and ultimately it was determined that we gave them notice. And I'll explain to you why, because what you're hearing from Old School Square is they're the victim, they've been victimized, but they've had ample opportunity to come into compliance. During one of the meetings, we opted to assign our auditor, and the purpose of that was so that she could assist them by telling them what they needed to be in compliance, because they had been struggling for so long, and we were getting frustrated, and everybody was frustrated. Every commissioner was frustrated. If you go back and look at meetings from the CRA, the comments indicate that there wasn't one of us that wasn't frustrated. Now at the commission side, when we're having this vote, what is not maybe so obvious to the public is that we assign the auditor in an effort to help them be in compliance. And as she's reporting to us, they're just throwing stacks of paper at her, none identified. This is what you need. And then she'll go through it in its entirety, and it's not what we needed. Or they were not responding to emails. I mean, they weren't cooperative is ultimately what happened. So we didn't even feel as though they were trying to be in compliance. That, in conjunction with the fact that they reported to the CRA that the reason why they were so behind on their audits was because their auditors had, why am I on in two
Twice.
screens?
Yeah. I'm Gail, not Julie.
Oh, sorry, Gail.
don't
Hello,
know how
I'm
that
sorry.
happened.
I gave her my code. I apologize.
Okay.
I saw my name twice. I thought that odd. Anyway, pardon me for that interruption. So at the CRA, representatives from Old School Square stood in front of us and said that the issues with their audit related to their auditor. But when the CRA director reached out to the auditors at our direction, what the auditors said was remarkably different. One auditor had to disengage with them. Another auditor did the same and said that their books didn't reconcile. So there is a lot behind the scenes that's involved that is probably not obvious. And immediately after the vote, a letter was sent from the lawyer representing Old School Square asking us to preserve all documents. And when that happens, litigation is coming. And so the city hasn't really been talking too much about it. But listen, I totally respect the history of that nonprofit and the buildings and what it provides. But I have a duty to the taxpayers, and I ran on fiscal responsibility. And so I can't turn away and not question what's going on there. And I'm not saying that there's anything going on there that is corrupt. I'm saying what I'm saying. They're not in compliance, and they're not trying to be in compliance. They're not cooperating. And in a bizarre twist, instead of just doing that, the day after the meeting, they emailed 10,000 people and said, our lease is being terminated, but we are in compliance. They keep on saying things that aren't true. And I find that remarkable because, to be honest with you, this situation, had they handled it differently, probably would have been rectified. But the way that they've handled it, scorched earth, and their either inability or lack of desire to be in compliance is pretty startling. So that is the long and the short of it. There's much more to it than they're telling, and we're not really saying very much because of the litigation.
Okay, what happens going forward?
Going forward, the city manager, so we had a meeting, we put out an RFP, and we had people come from all over. I mean, I'm told people were there from well outside of Florida, but then Old School Square had one of their board members and his friend in the meeting, and all they were talking about was litigation. I think people got nervous about that. But what the city is going to do is look to get somebody in there to, take care of things until we can resolve that situation, and then have somebody in there permanently. Either way, listen, programming really, the only thing that's gone on there in the last 2 years, I believe, is a couple of concerts. There haven't been any classes. The theater was not functional. The field house was functional, but that has been, the city's taken over. We've pretty much been running it for the last couple of months. The orchid show the city ran. We had a bar mitzvah, a wedding. We did the Christmas tree. We've been doing a lot of the stuff, the movies out there. So I can assure you things will continue at Old School Square.
Great.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
I like it.
Does anyone have any further questions for Julie?
I have one more comment. Just being on the board at this place, at Rainberry, is just overwhelming. I cannot imagine what it must be like to be a commissioner trying to deal with all the crap. So my hat's off. If I had a hat, I'd take it off.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, you have that tree issue to deal with over there, and that's a
We're
big deal.
dealing with it. We're going.
Yeah, I know. I was actually over there playing tennis. You have lovely tennis courts. So you know what? I am getting so much done, and I find that very rewarding. So I just keep positive and smile and keep going and do my best.
Thank
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, you have our support, as Rob said in the chat.
Thank you. I really
yeah.
appreciate that. It
Yeah.
means a lot to me.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Marty, you have a question? Unmute. There you go.
And Delray citizens, be assured there won't be development in Old Square.
No, oh my gosh, that was one of the fibs. I mean, people thought we were going to build apartments and someone, I mean, that, listen, the most disappointing thing about this situation was the reaction and the disinformation, really. Residents are outraged and they don't even know why. So I've answered probably, I would say, over 400 emails. And when you tell people what's actually going on, they're remarkably supportive. So everything will be fine.
Joy, you have your hand up. Unmute.
Yes. Well, first of all, I just wanted to thank you for this forum tonight. From the state level to the local level, Michael, well done. And I want to thank Commissioner Casale for all her amazing hard work. I mean,
Thank you.
This is, it's really great to see such enthusiasm and such, smarts and hard work all put together. You mentioned development as a key issue here, and I just wanted to mention to the group and get any comments you might have. Atlantic Crossing is coming online now. And, as everybody knows, that was a very controversial development to start with, lawsuits against the city, et cetera. Finally, there was a compromise. And as we all know, construction's been ongoing. There is a sports club that is applying for a conditional use, and they'd like to stay open until 2 a.m. They have the right by law, by their property rights, to stay open until midnight. But they'd like to stay open until 2 a.m. And as a member of the Planning and Zoning Commission, I voted against that because for very many reasons, but one, the entertainment district ends, as you know, at the Colony Hotel there at Federal. And I'm concerned about the impact on the neighboring residents and also the people who haven't even bought yet at Atlantic Crossing that are coming in and thinking they're going to be able to go downstairs and go to a restaurant, but not understanding that there could be essentially a nightclub operating till 2 a.m. And I'm concerned about the precedent, and I'm concerned about the kind of, businesses we're attracting. And I just wondered if you had any comments on that.
Is that for me, Joy?
Yes, for you.
Oh, sorry. Well, the vote is upcoming. So hang on, my child is talking. I'm still in a meeting. The vote is coming up, so I'm really not supposed to, I shouldn't really be discussing an upcoming vote. But what I will say to you is there are a lot of people reaching out concerned about the ramifications, and, rightfully so. It is expanding. It's basically taking and expanding the entertainment district beyond where it is. And, that district was designated for a very specific area, which was to keep the noise centrally located. And what we are finding of late is that we are getting noise complaints, and a lot of them, I believe 74 from one development that is in close proximity to a place that has is operating till late at the night and using the outside area. So I think we're very sensitive to this issue, and I'm looking forward to the presentation, but I haven't really seen anything yet on it. It's not on the agenda yet, and I haven't heard from the individual applicant.
I understand. I would just say to everybody here, I'd encourage everyone to look into it, to look at the planning and zoning meeting of a couple of weeks ago and some of the issues that were raised there. And if you're concerned about it, to write to commissioners, including Commissioner Casale. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, if there are no more questions, I just want to mention that this Saturday, kicking off the MLK weekend, the precinct that Shar and I are co-leaders of in the mostly Haitian and African American communities actually across the street from us, the Chatelaine and Delray Shores, we're having quote unquote day of action, handing out, basically doing door hangers that will have information about where people can get vaccinated and sort of the kickoff to the campaign. So I'm putting in chat my email. If anyone is interested in joining, just copy it down, send me, let me know, and I'll get you the details. Joan has her hand up. And for those who don't know Joan, I should have introduced her at the very beginning. She's the president of the Greater Boynton Democratic Club, which is an absolutely unbelievable club. The speakers that she gets and the turnout that she gets make me very jealous. But go ahead, Joan.
Thanks, Michael. Well, first I want to say hello to everybody, and just the question I was going to ask the former governor was our concerns about seniors voting, because of course we're going to push early voting and get those ballots, vote by mail ballots, to the post office as soon as possible. But the truth is that a lot of our seniors can't get out of their homes, and with the fear of quote unquote ballot harvesting, and our volunteers afraid of getting charged with a misdemeanor for doing that, we've got to figure out some way to get around this. And that's a large portion of our voting population. And the former governor knows that. One of his campaign managers, Lou Grossman, who was here tonight, I don't think he's here anymore, but is very involved with the senior council on the state level, on the county level. And perhaps we can get him to speak to us at a future date and give us some ideas what their plans are. I know they're working closely with the seniors. And just to let you know that our next club and caucus president's meeting is going to be on January 31st. And we'll be talking about some of the things that Terry is working on right now as far as planning and strategy for the election. So I'm looking forward to hearing what she has to say about that. So thank you all. Thank you. I know it's a very active group. I'll say hello to everybody. Good luck in everything that you're doing. Happy New Year.
Okay, thank you, Joan. And I should give a shout out to Mary Therese Delayed, who is the president of the West Palm Beach Democratic Club, another really great club. And Hassan Zangahir, you can see he's running for House Rep in District 90, which is up in your area, Joan, I think, right, in Boynton. So if you're in that area and you want to interact with them, that'd be nice. The one thing that to answer your question about strategy, Joan, that I thought about doing is I don't think there's anything in the law that you know, we had souls to the polls or driving people to go vote. With vote by mail ballots, couldn't we carpool people over? I mean, you know, I mean, it's maybe because some of that population is not going to get in a car and drive over there, you know. I mean, and I guess the alternative, another alternative, is mailing the ballots in. The irony is that last year, when they kind of showed their hand early to Joy, it was a total mess over the summer, and we had the president of the local postal workers union in West Palm talked to us last year before the election, and he absolutely assured us that there'd be no problem with the you know, with getting the ballots in on time. He said they're a different shape, you know, so they stand out, and the workers were committed to doing that. And amazingly, since you can track your ballots online at the SOE, both Shar and I mailed ours in rather than drop them off. And instead of waiting a week or more, which is what happens when you drop them off locally and then they have to truck them up to West Palm, our votes were counted the next day. They, you know, so I don't know if it's going to be the same this year. The mails seem to be worse than they were last year, but that's on ordinary packages and letters. It's not on, you know, on VBM. So.
And to follow up on that, Michael, I think we have to delve into voter education. There's most of our voters don't know what these new voter suppression laws are and how they're going to impact them. Also, when I first moved to Florida about 20 years ago, I don't know if Jeff Cashton remembers this or not, but we used to go over to the independent assisted living facilities, which some of them are exempt from these suppression laws, to try to register voters and collect ballots and so on. So I think that's something else maybe we have to go back to doing. SOE has been taking over a lot of that, but they may need some help.
Good. Okay. All right. Well, if there's nothing further, thank you all for coming. Next month, if we're lucky, we're going to have Senator Taddeo as the principal speaker. If not, we're going to try to get her for March. And see you then.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. Thanks.
Thank you all.
Thanks.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.